welcome to episode 18 of Roll, Play, Grow, the podcast for tabletop entrepreneurs, creators, and fans. I am Courtney Stover of Lightheart Adventures, and in this podcast, we talk to the creators behind the brands and the tabletop roleplay gaming space about who they are and how they are turning their passion for gaming into a career. We're continuing our sound series today with an interview with Christian Borchert, the founder of My Sound Delve, which is an app of compiled sound effects that you can play during your tabletop games. The coolest feature is the ability to make scenarios, complete with the ability to roll your dice on the app and have it immediately go into a pass, fail, crit, fumble, or what have you sound effect, depending on the roll. If you are wondering what that means, don't worry. We actually have some examples play during the show today. Christian also tells us just all about the app, working with an app development company. He plays plenty of example sound effects to give a really good demonstration of how broad the options are. Seriously, y'all will get to hear a lot of effects, and there is one that he plays that just gives me the heebie-jeebies every time I hear it. I will let y'all guess which one that is. As usual, I've got a few items of business to go over before we jump into the interview. I've been mentioning this for the past couple of episodes, but we do have a bunch of map packs over on DM's Guild. We are really close to hitting a silver medal on our Rime of the Frost Maiden map pack, which is compiled of a bunch of black and white maps for Ythryn. We also have a new release of some map packs for Candlekeep Mysteries. These maps are all in color, and they're getting some good traction. They're doing well. But if you find yourself needing some maps for Candlekeep Mysteries, Rime of the Frost Maiden, or just some more generic ones like Catacombs or Elvish Ruins, we've got a bunch of map packs that y'all can check out at DM's Guild. You can find that either by going to dmsguild.com and searching for Lightheart Adventures as the author, or you can go to lightheartadventures.com/shop to find all our DM's Guild and Drive-Thru RPG publications in one spot. The affiliate that I'm going to mention today is Dice Envy. They make some really sweet dice with a variety of materials and designs, and we've got a pretty big stash of their dice in our collection now. My personal favorite is the metal dice, but we've also got some really nifty acrylic and really pretty wood dice now as well. If you would like to snag some for yourself, you can go to diceenvy.com and enter in code LightheartADV to receive 10% off your order and help support this show. Some other ways that you can support the show are by subscribing to it on your podcast player of choice and leaving a review. Honestly, reviews are a really helpful way for the show to grow, for more people to find us. So if you have not had a chance to drop a review yet, I would very much appreciate it if you could do so. Lastly, another way that you can support the show or just Lightheart Adventures in general is that we do have a Patreon that covers both. A couple different tracks. You can get maps and stories on one of the tracks. You can get some podcast benefits on another, or you can get all of it if you want to get that top tier. However you are able to support, it is always greatly appreciated. I thank you, as always, for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoy this conversation with Christian. All right, y'all, I am really excited to now introduce you to Christian Borchert, the founder of My Sound Delve. Hello, Christian. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Courtney?
Doing pretty good as well. I'm really excited to dive into learning about your app.
Or delve in, as I would say.
Well, perfect. To start us off, can you tell us a bit about who you are and how you got into gaming?
Sure. So I am a middle-aged male who is a father of two. I do sales during the day in healthcare, and I've been in the healthcare business industry since 1998. I've mostly traveled with my job, and I was a D&D player in the mid-'80s, introduced by some friends, but we didn't have a gaming group. There was no nerdium that I could participate in until after college and after I started getting into my career. There was a guy that was a colleague of mine who ended up becoming my dungeon master for about 10 years. And then about year 6, I started wanting to do my own group. And so I bifurcated from that group and started my own and never really looked back. I played a few more times with that particular group, but they were younger, they were having babies and conflicts and schedules and stuff. I make a big joke that that particular group, we spent 10 years doing City of the Spider Queen. One module took us 10 years. So it was very minimal play. And so that actually played into my story of how I got into making a sound app. So currently I run 2 sessions. I've played Pathfinder 1.0, and I also play Starfinder. And so I've got this kind of an overlapping group. I call our group the Lords and Ladies of the Nerdium. And it's about, 17 people from around my life, in high school and college and local. And we get together via virtually and sometimes in person. And so I game master, and I have mentored one of our players. So he acts as a game master, so I can actually play again, which has been really fun.
Which game are you able to play in?
Starfinder, I'm able to play in. Although I'm pretty happy. One of our other players is going to be writing a one-shot this summer, because all the stuff around, Masquerade and Ravenloft, he just loves that genre. So he's going to put us through a one-shot this fall, and that will be his first exposure or experience being a game master.
Oh, that's really fun.
Yeah, so we'll have 3 in our team, which is great.
It is nice to have a break from being the forever DM, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, I would love to just start learning about my sound delve. So to start us off, can you tell us what this app is and all the fun things that you're doing with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the space to get the word out that there is another tool out there for sound effects. And I mentioned that I played very minimally for the better part of 10 years. And so my progression came from, okay, we're using Lego figurines and a battle map on the ground, on the table with markers. Wizards of the Coast started putting some of these really cool, right, their figurines out, their blister packs. So I was in sales. So when I would make a good sale, I'd go to the gaming store and I'd grab some blister packs. So I started growing that. Now, great figurines don't look great on a battle map, so I started collecting those dungeon tiles. And now that was even better, but didn't really stay together very great. So then I got into terrain making, right? So again, I'm not playing that frequent. I'm collecting all this stuff. So when we get together, we do openings and we say, okay, what terrain, did Christian make? And I kind of broke away, and I wanted to play more frequent. And I wanted to play, in a kind of my style of dungeon mastering, which is a little bit more improv. It's a little bit more inclusive, right? So I assign tasks for my players. Like, I don't keep track of player hit points, right? That's the cleric's role, right? They're the hospitalist. They should know, who's healthy, who's not, whatever. Those kinds of things. And so anyway, so it was this natural progression of like, what else can I do to make, because I don't have quality or quantity, what can I do to increase the quality? And so in 2011, I had this idea for an app, and I just sat on it. I did go to GoDaddy, and I did get the URL reserved that I wanted, my sound delve. And right, so just like a dungeon delve, right, we're delving into sounds, and I just sat on it, and I'm just waiting. I'm waiting and waiting. Now, Sirenscape came to the scene, and Sirenscape's got great ambient sounds. They've got some sounds embedded in there. And last summer, they came out with all these different spell sounds, which I was a little disappointed because that was like my shtick. But that's okay. But that is a game master tool. I, all along, just like I said, I give my players stuff to do at the table. I wanted to see an app come to the market that was very player-centric. And so rather than say, hey, Courtney, I want to cast Fireball, and then you search and find the Fireball sound and shoot it out for me, I want to be able to do it myself, right? So I want all of the agency in my purview, right? So that's what I did. And it took me a while to get to a point where I'm like, okay, my idea's baked in enough, and the lockdown really kind of put it into place last year. Like, okay, I'm grounded. Like I've traveled, right? So I'd be on the road, used to be 100% of the time, Monday through Friday. Then it went to, less than that. And so I just put pen and paper onto a marketing idea. First meeting was with a lawyer. Can I do this? Yep, you just need the right licensing. Okay, great, let's do it. Then I farmed out the idea to some developers and bonded with one company, and they're called Cadabrasoft. They're awesome. They just really work well with me. And so that was in June, and then by the end of August, we had a working prototype.
Wow, that is fast.
Yeah, it was pretty well, yeah, it is fast. And so one of the unique things what separates us from the majority of sound effects that are out there, right? A lot of people use a jukebox, or they use, a soundboard or whatever. But typically, unless they've mixed them together with an action and a result, they're typically just one piece of it. What I wanted to do was an interface that incorporated both the action and the result, just like a die roll, right? So you've got, oh, I want to, swing my battle axe and take, attack this orc. And I roll the die, and the DM says, yep, thumbs up or thumbs down. Was that successful or was that not? Well, you've got the action sound, right? I'm running up to, I'm pulling out my axe, or I'm whoosh, I'm swinging the axe. Did I hit? Would be one sound. Did I miss? That would be a totally separate sound. Did I crit or did I fumble? So what I wanted was an interface that had that component to it. So we have electronic dice built into it, but we also have a swift roll. So there's success, failure, critical success, or critical failure. So when you create a scenario and you're choosing your different sounds, it's always the same action, and then there will be the 4 options for the result. Very different from what is in the market today.
That is a really cool process. And I was actually checking out the app myself a little bit before this interview. Yeah, I mean, it is really awesome. And I would actually love to have you play a couple different examples of what you mean.
Sure, absolutely. So the app is broken into 4 sections. The first section is going to bring you to a scenario screen. And there are 4 built-in scenarios. And that just gives a user okay, let me reverse engineer this, right? So let me mimic this, right? So, oh, it's a fighter. Oh, it's poison spray, right? So a fighter comes up, and there's, again, all of those various sounds, those 5 sounds, and then there is a space for what is your critical, although there's no way for me to match everybody's unique critical rule. So sometimes that, as open sandbox as I want it to be, it's not exactly open sandbox in that respect. But I've got advantage and disadvantage in there. There's a multitude of modifiers. And then you've got your damage result. Now, I personally love the damage result. So I can have a character roll a die, okay, and then, yep, success.
Having fun yet?
There we go. Now I know, okay, the player would say, oh, I hit for 7. I heard it. So if somebody's even zooming, right, and they're using this, which is kind of the way we play, it also comes across, which is really fun. All right, so here's an example of a fail. Same thing.
Having fun yet?
All right, that's a fail. Then you can create your own scenario. So before we were recording, I had shared I have a cleric that I play, Lantry, and so he can fight with a holy sword. So I actually have both the sword, holy, and then just regular longsword, because if it's an evil creature, it does extra damage. So I wanted to accommodate that. So if you create a scenario and you hold the icon down, you can duplicate it, rename it, and make one change, and so you don't have to like recreate the wheel, right? So here's Lantry with a fumble.
Shine in the light.
Oops, right? And so if I rolled a 1, right, then I would play that. But there's also the ability to say, okay, and this is the way I play. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong, but I let my characters know as I'm DMing. Okay, Courtney, you need an 18 to hit this creature. So if I'm using the app, I would put 18 in for the number needed. Hit roll.
Shine in the light.
Okay, failed. Sorry, next person. But what's really, really fun about it is you take your character sheet, you look at all the stuff you can do, and then you start making some scenarios around it. And we have over 2,000 sounds. And we break those sounds into, which is the next section of the app, which is the sound gallery. And we do all sounds, weapons, both melee range spells, Divine Druid Arcane, Critical Fumble, Foley, which is essentially background noise, right? That's like a little snippet of ambience, or phrases. And people really have gravitated well to the phrases, right? So we just released a bunch of droid sounds. And so I wrote a lot of these different phrases. And so I'm just going to play a few for you that are fun.
You vex my coding.
My subroutines are tingling.
They're just a lot of fun.
Stop squirming, you worm.
So I hired a whole bunch of voice actors because I wanted to take some of the really awesome things that I loved from like Baldur's Gate or other video games, which were these, combat as well as these really fun phrases that a character would have. Either it's an NPC or PC would have. And so if you combine them with your kind of like a battle taunt or whatever, it's kind of fun, right? Here's another one.
May the dunes swallow you whole.
Now, I can't do voices. I mean, I have a theater background, but I was really, really bad at, different voices. So, I can't do this.
Get your hands off me boots.
But it's fun to have in there, right? And then so if you combine that with an action, you end up with something that's pretty fun. The other thing in the sound galleries, you're going to see a ton of spells. And it's not that I have a ton of spells that I've made. I'm about 200 spells, so there's a lot, but it's currently listed as like total spells is like 120 or 1,025. It's because of the verbal component. So the verbal component was one of the drivers behind the app itself. Since its inception, Dungeons & Dragons required most spells to have a verbal component to accompany the spell result. And so we've got, so I actually wrote a language, or 3 languages for the verbal components. So let me go into, here's an example.
Imibun hateum labasho.
Right. And then I've got them broken down by school. Okay. So that's a divination spell. And it's just like divination spell 7. So it's not like specifically tied to any specific spell, just the school. So 6 seconds is not a long time, right? To go in with a with a turn. All right. Last sound thing here. So that's discordant murmur.
Uh-huh.
Now, right? So, which is not that in any other space except my app. I run into some licensing challenge. The open gaming license from Wizards of the Coast is great, but it doesn't cover everything. So I have to end up being, just like other creatives that are doing Kickstarters or other things, you have to be creative, right? And so there's a lot of stuff that's in there that is uniquely named, but similar. You can record your own voice in the app. And so, here's me. I was doing a fun response to somebody in Twitter who was like, mentioned their sword. Every time that they swing it, it yells the word ale. So I'm like, oh my God, I totally need that. So I created one for him.
Ale.
Right. So that's me. I'm no voice actor, but I can yell ale, right? And then the other thing is you can import unlimited sound files. So at our table, we hear, I'm going to scroll through here. I can't do it because of copyright, but we've got Spaceballs, Simpsons, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Star Wars, of course, and other movies, Terminator and whatnot. And so you grab those and you put them in, and you're not violating copyright because you're not selling them. You can grab them and use them in your game session. And as long as you're not on YouTube and you're not on Twitch, and you're not putting it out there, you can use it on at home, no problem. So those are the things. There's a settings section for tutorials and that kind of thing. There's even an ability to shake your phone if you wanted to roll the dice, right? Roll the electronic dice by shaking your phone. That's in there as well. So every month we do new sounds, and give us a try. If you like sound effects and you play tabletop role play, it does work via Zoom, does work in person, great. Zoom would be second. That kind of streaming, and then VTT, we don't have a plug-in for that, and so just like Zooming, if you're using Discord and you can use there's some splitters that you can split for your microphone as well as your phone, so they share the same audio space. So yeah, that's that. Thanks for giving me the time to really give an expose.
Yeah, those were some amazing sound effects. And so my next question is going to be, what is the process for making new effects? You mentioned that you are adding new effects every month. So how do you decide what effects you're going to add? And then how do you make them?
That's awesome. So like any creator, I'm always on the lookout for inspiration. And the Twitter community has been pretty awesome for some inspiration. So I'm documenting a number of things, when I see a tweet like, what's your favorite spell and how have you used it, right? And then people like, I'm like, oh, that's great. Let me write that down, right? And so, I'll like spam people that I see, with like a weapon or a spell or a phrase or whatever. I'll like grab their picture off of Twitter, and then I'll make them a quick little, 10-second audio response. And so anyway, so I get some encouragement there. In May, I was all set to do release for the droid sounds, right? I played just some of the droid things. But then there were a number of folks that had put Bard stuff out. And I'm like, you know what? I really want to focus on some Bard stuff. And so between Thursday night and Monday night, I put together the entire sound pack for the May Bardic sound release. And that ended up being close to 100 sounds. So my process is I use a couple sound houses, and I get raw materials, and I will package them together. Now, the Bard stuff, I could do it because a lot of that was sampling, right? So it's, sampling some music and then kind of adding some layers onto it. But other things, like when I'm doing monsters, I just did a poll for, Patch does this Searching Sunday. He kind of started that, and I really thought that was a really awesome, hashtag. And so I did a survey, and most people were interested in aberrations, which is great because that works for Cthulhu. So I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm glad that one won. But I've got to layer in, right? So it's like, all right, each sound tells a story. I've got slithering, right? Because maybe it's like a kind of an oozy thing, right? Oh, maybe it's got tentacles, so it's going to have some kind of whoosh to it. maybe it's like got some oozing pus or something, right? And then of course it has to have a verbal element to it. So it's like, gurgling or whatever, because, the vocal cords are different from a humanoid. What does that sound like? And so, I intentionally think about, I will use source material like the monster manuals. I'm always, as I'm watching movies or whatever, I will kind of jot things down. Like I use, notes on my phone like you wouldn't believe. I got so many different tabs for different things, but I will grab them and I will start making a story with the various sounds. I do have a rule. There's a couple rules. No sound is longer than 9 seconds in our app. And that made the Bard stuff really hard. Because, man, when you start rocking to some of those sounds, it's so much fun. I can't even, believe how much fun that was. But, and I'll play some for you in a little bit here. So my other rule is 45 minutes. So if I'm really, really struggling, like I could not stand my first iteration of Magic Missile. It didn't sound right. I mean, we've got something that comes into existence, right? And it moves across the field and then hits something, right? And even my current ones, I'm not entirely, in love with, but they work. And so I actually have 1 through 5. So it's single, double, triple, quadruple, and pentuple. So here's a quadruple one. Right? So it comes into existence, it goes across the field, then hits. So it's boom, 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 boom. And recall that in our app, the action would be a spellcaster casting it. So that would be the action sound, and the result would be, And I love them because they typically always hit, right? So that's my process. I do it about almost every night. And I wanted to release with a whole bunch of sounds across multiple genres and everything. But I ended up releasing in last November with about 1,000 fantasy sounds. And then in December, I wanted to do some monster sounds. So I did a spattering of that. So I've got crush, bite, incorporeal touch. I've got like ooze. I've got lizard spitting. I've got a whole bunch of dragon sounds. It was a scatter shot across multiple types of monsters just to get it out there. And then after that monster release, I started becoming a lot more intentional. And so then I had a couple sci-fi releases because I play Starfinder. So, I'm a little bit partial to science fiction sounds at the moment because I love that. And so I've got a whole bunch of spaceship sounds, and they're fun too, all right, to put together for that. So each month I'm going to do new different releases. Next month is Droid 2.0. Then I'm going to do some monsters. I'm going to do an August Aberration release. And then September, I'm thinking pirates, because I've seen a number of sea shanties and whatnot. And then October, I'm doing a disability awareness. So I'm going to have a bunch of sounds in there for, wheelchairs and crutches and flying carpets and, other things that support, people that are playing with those types of PCs and NPCs. And then the latter part is going to be horror, because Halloween, you can't not have horror. And then after that, I'm open. I'm probably going to focus on some stuff from the things I'm gathering from Twitter and come up with a theme.
Okay. Sounds like you've definitely got a pretty solid plan for the next few months. And I think that's really interesting how you have been able to focus and make so many. I mean, honestly, when I saw on the website that you release new sounds every month, I had no idea that could mean that you would have hundreds to 1,000 sounds in a month.
Well, yeah. I mean, I started it in November last year with 1,000. And then every month thereafter, it's been at around 100 or more each month. Now, I have to become more intentional and kind of hone it down. And one of the things, once I have some more users and can pay for, I mean, the investment's unbelievable. App development is not cheap. But once I can, spend some more money, I want to do more filtering. So, for instance, I just want to see science fiction sounds. Okay, cool. All the fantasy stuff's gone, right? I do use key tagging, and so that's keywords, and so that's helpful. But it's still very daunting. Like I get it. Like if any feedback comes across like, holy cow, your library's huge, and we do break it down, and we do you can use the microphone and say like fire, and like any spell or any thing that comes across that's labeled fire would come up. So there's some tricks to it, but that's like what I want to do is make, that's my next big thing is to make it a little bit more user friendly for searching.
That makes sense. I would love to go back and talk a bit more about the timeline, though. So if I'm remembering correctly, I think you said that you approached a company to help with the actual development of the app last summer, and then it was 2 months later that an alpha version was ready. Is that correct?
Yeah. Our alpha version, the prototype was available August 31st. So they started June 1, and boom, they had that ready. So, and I came to them with a PowerPoint, which was one wireframe, right? It was essentially, I mocked up, using PowerPoint, the scenario screen. And so it had the kind of the core elements. And I also gave them a marketing strategy paper. So it was about 18 pages long, and I had gone through and I did a lot of research trying to answer the question, is there a space for a sound effect app in this niche space, right? So the gaming hobby space. And so I addressed it, I looked at, Pew market research on how many people have smartphones and all these different things. And what's the most popular, TTRPG, that's played, both virtually and pen and paper and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, we partnered with, we talked with, or I say we, it's royal we, it's me. I talked with 4 development companies, and I used Clutch, which is kind of like the Yelp for developers. And so Clutch, I needed to find, an organization that would work with me with the budget I had, that I'm a startup. So like not every development company, app dev company wants to work with a startup. We're kind of pains in the butt in some respects. We've got a great idea, but we don't know how to like actualize it. But these guys were great. I had some proposals, and they weren't the cheapest. They weren't the most expensive. They were in the middle, but they were the most engaged from the very beginning. And not one of them, had direct experience with TTRPG. So it's been a learning curve for them. And they've been great partners. Keep asking questions about that because that's interesting, I think, for some of you. If people are still hanging around after 30 minutes of listening to me talk about the app, please continue to ask the development questions.
Yeah. So then once you had that alpha version ready at the end of August, how long did it take you to get to a more like public release, and kind of what were the steps that you took?
Sure. That's a great question. So the first version we had didn't have the Swift roll. All it had was a number needed, right? So because that's the huge thing, right? Is that just like a die roll, there's a determining factor of what makes the secondary sound, the resulting sound, yes, no, critical or fumble. And so we had the beta set up. I set up a group, which was my play group, and got them. And we made a conscious decision to focus on Apple first and have Android 2 weeks behind. so we could try some things and see if they worked out with the development around one operating system, address it, answer it, and if there are problems or whatever, stop, address that, and then Android would follow. And so both of our apps are built, in native environment, which is good and bad, right? I mean, there's a pro and a con for every choice that you make, but that's the choice that we ended up making. And between September 1 and October 31, we had gone through, I want to say, 7 different slight versions of whatnot. And during that time, I was also working with some of the voice actors. And so we were doing all of our scheduling. And so that meant I had 3.5 weeks to edit down all of the 6 voice actor recordings to get to 1,000 sounds for our release, which we launched at Mace, the gaming convention Mace in Charlotte, North Carolina. And this year is their 25th, and it is in mid-November, and I'm going to be flying down to celebrate that with their organizers. Great set of folks. And so we launched November 13th because it's an auspicious day. I drove all the way down to Charlotte, and we launched, and we had some interest down there. It was fun.
That's so cool.
Thanks.
I bet that was an absolute whirlwind, though. That is a lot of work in a short amount of time.
Yes, it was. My kids didn't see me for a while. It was the mad scientist working in the basement. But it's interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people will very much relate. And Courtney, you may relate to this. With the lockdown, there were certain things that we used to do that we no longer did, right? We shed old habits. I'm now in a new habit in which I work all day, have dinner with the kids, watch some TV with the wife, and then I work, into the wee hours on this project, and that's kind of become my new routine. And I know at some point, because we're vaccinated and other people, we're reaching herd. We're going to be over this hump, and no longer is this lockdown going to be a thing. And I've got to shed my new way, right? Like I'm in a new work pattern, and I'm just thinking about the future of how can I, maintain this? And I know what the answer is. It's just, again, I have to be more intentional, more focused on, and less quantity, and just keep the quality high.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. As hard as last year was, there have been a lot of really cool projects that came out of it, and
unbelievable.
It definitely has helped people to have the time to focus on things that they wanted to do before.
Agreed. Well, yeah, my relationship with my daughter and my family's never been better. I mentioned I've been on the road pretty much my entire career. And that was just I can't wait to get back on the road again, month 1. Can't wait to get back on the road again, month 2. Now, fast forward, month 10. Shit, I got to go back on the road at some point, But, people, things change.
Yes, absolutely. But it is really nice that you're able to take advantage, I guess, of the time at home. And because you said that you had this idea 10 years ago.
So. I did. I'm so ashamed that I did, but and did nothing about it. But you know what? It is what it is. The timing was right, and I'm looking for collabs. Right. So we are our own thing. Right. We you can't take our sounds out of our app, and that's because of licensing. But it doesn't mean that I can't work with other organizations that are putting content out, and I'm talking with a couple VTT companies. I'm talking with some Kickstarters, right? So, some stretch goals for putting sounds unique to that world setting, whether it's spells or weapons or NPCs or whatever, right? Hey, we can make that an in-app purchase, right? One-time fee. it's available to your stretch goal, people that are affiliated. And then in the future, boom, you've got some unique things for your world setting. I'm totally cool with talking about that. Any podcasts, any VODs, any streamers that want to use our sounds, I'm not asking for, any like heavy commitment other than put us in the show notes. And I'll cross promote because, like many listeners today, and probably Courtney, I would put you in this camp. If you've got a free app and you've got to wait 30 seconds to watch a video before you can access that content, it kind of sucks. So I hate that. And so I didn't want that in our app. And so I have no ad revenue. The only revenue that we have is from a subscription level, which is $3.99 a month. I wanted it similar to like a Patreon or a Ko-Fi or Buy Me Coffee, right, for all the creative content that comes out every month. But on the free stuff, the free side, so it's either freemium and you get about 100 sounds, you get the majority of the functionality, you can't record, you can't import, and you can't access the majority of the sounds. But there's a banner on the bottom, and we're going to cross-promote and advertise for outfits that use us. So it's a cross-promotion opportunity. So right now I've got the Nat 30s and their podcast group, and I'm advertising for them because they've agreed to use our sounds in their podcast. And so I'm looking for more collabs like that. And it doesn't take over. It's an enhancement. It's like a really great sauce that you add to your meal, right? It's not the meal itself. It's just a nice, addition to it. So, and we give full premium access to anybody for 3 days. So you can hear it all. You can experience the whole thing before you make your choice to become a subscriber.
Yeah, that is honestly a incredibly reasonable price for a monthly subscription. Have you considered doing a Patreon?
Well, it's interesting. So Google is a little bit more open and free with things like different ideas for, codes, like promotion codes and that kind of thing, whereas Apple is not. Apple gives me 100 codes I can give people for free in my lifetime. So that's kind of annoying. But I will say Apple and Android or Google, Play, I don't have to take care of any like transactional payments. I don't have to do any reporting. There's a lot of benefit for leveraging their app stores, like a lot. And, you pay for it. And so I'm okay with that. But I've thought about it. But on the other hand, some of my licensing doesn't allow me to. Our lawyer's interpretation of some of the licensing wording is such that we can't like resell, right? Even though it's raw, that there's some stipulations around that. So as long as it stays in our app, it's totally cool. But if we can't release these sounds into the wild. So I'll explain a little bit more about what you are referring to with Patreon.
Oh, well, so first off, that definitely makes sense. I guess, some interesting ways that I've seen Patreon used are with perks around like helping with brainstorming, maybe like kind of getting previews of sounds that are coming, or maybe they get to contribute to a category of sounds like, okay, like, God, you don't know what you're going to put out for December yet. So what are some sounds that people could see and like vote on that?
That's cool. I've thought about a Discord, but again, I'm a one band, one man band. I've thought about a Discord, and I've seen where there's like a Patreon Discord attachment, or somehow they're combined. So if I'm a supporter at the Patreon, I can get access to somebody's Discord, or I've got like channels that I have that open up to me. That's cool. I mean, I've thought about, other people making sounds and then putting them out there and then having them as part of the free option, but I can't control copyright, and I don't want to be liable, right? I'm not a Napster. This is not file sharing. So it becomes it becomes problematic pretty quick. And what's interesting is that the current version, right, like anything, is not the original version. The original version, I had wanted to do a sound effect app, and then I had wanted to do a second app that had imported sounds and recording. And then if you had the sister app, it would tie into the Sound Delve app. So originally it was just called Sound Delve, right? And I was talking with the developers about it, and they're like, well, why don't we just do one app, right? Let's save you a lot of money. Right? You can do it all, right? I'm like, oh, that's great, right? So, we combined both of those ideas, right, into a single app, right? I mean, so yeah, our next big, I mentioned the ability to go through our sounds quicker, but I don't want to fail to mention this Kickstarter. So I don't know if you saw the Pixel dice, those light up dice that are Bluetooth.
Yes.
So we backed them, and we are going to program our app to be compatible with those dice. So that will be a third way to engage our sounds with rolling a die, right? So again, today you can roll an electronic die, you can roll your own die and then choose success, failure, whatever. In the future, you could roll a pixel die and it will tie into our app and play the appropriate sounds. So we're pretty excited about that one.
That sounds amazing.
Right? And it'll give me a really great giveaway at a future convention. Because they are not cheap, those Bluetooth die. No. Did you back it?
I did not, because they're not cheap, but I'm definitely very much admiring them.
Right. I'm like, holy cow. But, I mean, for me, I can, write it off as a business expense, write it off as another loss, right? What's another $250? But so yeah, I'm super excited about that. Gene has been working on this for a while. I've been following him through his Hackaday stuff, because all along I've been like, I need a Bluetooth die, or I need something that's physical and audio, right? So I know there's a lot of things that are out there for virtual reality or augmented reality. I know what I am. I'm a simple sound effect, generator at your table, right? That's where I am now. I've got a ton of sound, so I can leverage, maybe some virtual tabletop. I mean, there's some things we can play around with that with our library, but by and large, like, hey, you roll die, you play, games at your table, awesome. Grab this free app, right? And if you really like it, become a subscriber and have it fun at your table. It's been great.
Yeah, I want to transition a little bit and ask a question that I like to ask everyone that comes on the show, which is, when you look back over the last year since you first approached the company or really even since before that, when you had the idea to go ahead and move forward with this, looking through like finding a company to help you develop it and just everything that you've done since then, what would you say has been the most challenging part?
The most challenging part. Easy. Saying no. Saying no has been the most challenging part. I have overspent and overspent and overspent because I love this project so much, right? So my budget for voiceover was $3,000. I spent 12.
Whew.
Yeah. Talent isn't cheap, right? And so, we've got some really talented voice actors in this project, right? I didn't want to focus only on one operating system. I wanted to focus on both Android and Apple. There's a lot of startups out there that only do one. Now I know why, because you're doubling the cost of all development, right? So, if anybody's looking for advice, don't follow my rule. Like what I did, like focus on one, build a consensus and following around that, and then bring in the other one. I'm way overspent on this project, and yeah, I'm because I couldn't say no. Oh, that's a great feature. We definitely need that, right? So, all right. So once you run out of money, then no is pretty easy.
Okay, fair enough.
You probably didn't expect that answer, but
I never know what I'm going to get with this question. It's part of why I love it, honestly.
I'll bet.
But let's flip it around then and say, what has been the most rewarding part?
Oh my God. The most rewarding part is like an actor who sees their face on a billboard, right? It's going into the app store and seeing that is my baby. That was my conception back in 2011. And here we are, right? 10 years later, and it is a reality, right? Okay, I overspent in it, but it's built. It's no longer just an idea. It was the itch I could never, ever scratch. And now that I've scratched it, I love it. It's so great, right? And I love all the feedback that we have in it. And I just seeing it out there is super cool.
Yeah, that must be so, so special.
Yeah, like the big lights, right? Oh, I'm on the marquee.
Well, you've mentioned a few different things that are coming up, but is there any project or kind of update that's coming up that you haven't mentioned yet that you're excited about and wanted to share?
Well, like I said, I'm always on the lookout for inspiration. So one of the things that I'm always looking for in inspiration are things that kind of fit my mold, right? We break our sounds down into these particular categories, but Foley is the catch-all, right? So I've got like sounds of traps in there. I've got some skill checks and whatnot. So I'm always looking for things that people are excited about. And again, the Twitter TTRPG community has been really great about putting good questions out there and good, posts and whatever. And even when I'm wrong or when I inadvertently spam somebody and sending an audio file, they're usually pretty good about it, which is pretty awesome. I've got Droid 2.0 is my next release. Then it's Aberrations. I mentioned that. I take suggestions, right? So if anybody's like playing a game and they go through our sounds and they're looking for something specific and they don't see it, I'm all ears, right? I mean, I came across somebody on Twitter had made a comment about an exploding volcano. I'm like, oh, I don't have an exploding volcano. That sounds like a really great sound though. And so I made one. When that happens, I made myself a rule to make those sounds free. So if the inception, the kernel was out in the Twitter sphere, if you will, I don't want to market. I don't want to make money on it necessarily. I want to put it out there and keep it cool, right? Keep it the rule of cool. It's out there for everybody to enjoy.
Well, Christian, thank you so much for coming on today. This was really fun to learn about your app and how you got it to the point that it's at now, which is a very amazing app, and everyone should go download it right now. It's a lot of fun to just play around it.
Thank you.
But where can people find you?
So My Sound Delve, DELVE, which will be in your show notes as well. That's where we are. We're Twitter, Insta, our website, YouTube. There's some tutorials that are out there. They're terrible, but they do explain, what to do, like how to group. So you start making your scenarios and you want to like save some screen space. You can start grouping them under each other, which is kind of cool. Just like you can with your phone apps, right? You just group them together. That My Sound Delve, that's I'm not known as Christian Borchert in the TTRPG space. I'm just known as My Sound Delve. So I did want to leave you with, I'll have you share with me. 8-bit synth, banjo, country guitar, drum, or electronic strings?
Ooh, 8-bit synth.
Oh, you like the... Okay, here we go. I've got 3 of these. Encouraging, inspiring, and enchanting. But I'm playing encouraging for you, Courtney.
I love that so much.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, you think about a bard and you think of the traditional lute. I mean, I've got a lute in there, which I actually partnered with Sean McCrow, who, if you've not interviewed him, you may want to. Great guy. He does a lot of sound music commission work. But you think about a bard, the traditional bard, but there's the futuristic bard. And like I said, in May, there was so much work, or in April, there was so much stuff coming out. I wanted my May sound release to be bard. And part of that was because of the metal bard subclass that had come out. It was pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, he was the last episode, actually. So.
Oh, no kidding. That's great. Well, then we definitely need some electric strings to go out. Because they inspired me.
Mm-hmm. So much fun.
I think it is. Cool. Thank you so much for the time that you've given me. I've really enjoyed it, and I apologize to your audience for not hearing more of your voice, Courtney.
The whole point of this is that I get to hang out and ask questions and listen to y'all talk.
Awesome. I do appreciate the space. Sincerely.
That's it for today's episode of Roll, Play, Grow. To check out the show notes, you can go to lightheartadventures.com/RPG. To keep up with every episode, please subscribe on your podcast player of choice. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave me a review. Reviews are one of the best ways to help a newer podcast get up off the ground. To follow me on Twitter, you can either find me at lightheartadv for our business account, or at Ketra, WCR, to see me tweet about other things like my dog and World of Warcraft. You can also find us as Lightheart Adventures on both Instagram and Patreon. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week on Roll, Play, Grow.